So, please help me give a massive warm welcome to Anna Mosley.
I don't need no news. All I need is a bump and beat. The bump away my blues. I don't even care what the people say. I'm gonna do it my way, gonna do it my way.
No! Yes, I've got the graveyard shift, but yes, I'm also going to keep you awake. Raise your hand if you want a high-performing business. That is pretty much every hand gone up. Raise your hand again if you can appreciate that to have a high-performing business, you as a leader and the quality of your team really do matter. Raise your hand if you agree with that. Well, perhaps you are in a position right now with your business where you're already pretty successful, but you would love to go from good to extraordinary. Perhaps you're sitting there right now in your chairs saying to yourself, I am flipping frustrated. I know my business is not performing or as productive as it could be, but you don't know where to start. Or maybe you are about to start a business and you're at the beginning of this journey. And for you, you would love to eventually develop a thriving team to deliver those commercial results, to become market leader, but you have no clue where to start either. Well, can you imagine having a highly effective team that is continually driving growth? You become market leader because you have learned how to nurture a high-performance culture, and you are absolutely smashing it. Imagine what that would feel like. What would that look like to you? Imagine the money just cha-chinging in your bank. What would your family be saying to you? It would be pretty awesome, right? Who wants a bit of this? Yes or yes? I think that's a yes from everyone. Well, in order to get from here to here, I am going to share with you 4 game-changing strategies today for driving high performance in your team that, I kid you not, can double your income in 90 days. So listen up wherever you are in your journey. Today we are going to talk about infectious leadership. You have so much more influence than you may realize as a leader. The question is, currently in your business, no matter what size it is, are you positively infecting the business and the team? Or are you negatively infecting your business and the team? I challenge you now to think about this metaphor. Your business is the body. Your employees are the cells, and you as leader are the immune system. Now the question is, have you currently got a powerful immune system or a weak immune system? We are going to look into this. So today, I am going to be taking you through 3 stages of my talk. The first thing we are going to look at is, what even does a thriving team look like? I'm going to delve into this. Having worked with, as Paul shared, some of the biggest organisations here, I am passionate about bridging the gap between mental fitness and high performance, driving high performance culture, starting with the leaders and filtering that down. But what does that really look like when it comes to a thriving team versus the sick team? None of us want the sick team. I'm going to dig into what the key viruses are that you lot need to look out for when it comes to team culture. Toxic leadership, I'm going to be exploring that. And of course, you're going to want solutions. So we're going to end with 4 high-performance boosters. These are the game-changing strategies that are going to make a serious difference to you, your business, your team, and yourself personally. Now, when we talk about leadership, you can apply this to all aspects of your life. You are all leaders. We can talk about self-leadership, how you are leading in your relationships at home. Something I'm very keen on is addressing people as the whole person. This isn't just about you at work. Yes, I'm going to hone in on that today, But I want you leading powerfully in your personal life as much as I do running your business, because you need to be thriving across all aspects in order to achieve peak performance, and I will go into that. But a little bit about me first. You know I'm a high-performance coach. I've explained this passion for mental fitness. I am multi-award winning. I now speak internationally. There's a lot of great stuff going on. However, despite being the UK's #1 high-performance coach in leadership and growth mindset right now, it hasn't always been that way. Have you ever felt completely stuck in your life? Raise your hand if you've ever felt that, completely stuck in a rut. Yeah, I can imagine most of you would relate to that. I'm going to take you back now to September 2017. And to set the scene, I was in a global leadership role at the time. I've worked in the corporate world for 15 years before embarking on my own business, and at this point, I was working my arse off. I've got 2 beautiful kids, 10 and 8, and at the time, I'd recently returned to work with a baby at home, 3-year-old in nursery, and the wider context of this is, I had always been a high achiever. Always wanted to be best in the class, was head girl at school, captain the sports teams. There was so much pressure on my shoulders. And I was a huge perfectionist. This is something very important to know about me. I am a recovering perfectionist. Do we have any perfectionists in the room? Do we think? Raise your hand if you can relate to this. High achievers often are, by the way. But let me take you back to this particular moment when I had been, for months, suffering panic attacks, struggling to be in the moment with my children. I had the most critical inner voice you can imagine. I had a constant tenseness in my body and in my gut, beating myself up for being a shit mum, for being forgetful, for being a bad leader. Now, guys, what you need to know is I was at the top of my stressometer. Imagine like a revometer in a car, right, that goes from 0 to 10. 10 is when you are having pretty much a panic attack or a breakdown or punching a wall, however it might show up for you. For me, it was severe overwhelm. And I'd been in this position with my foot down to the pedal pretty much all my life. But that curveball of having children sent me completely off track. I remember on this particular day, driving to a forecasting meeting at work, and all of a sudden, I completely and utterly forgot where I was driving to. It was a moment of panic. I stopped the car and paid attention to this voice in my head, which was just berating me beyond belief. And it was in this moment, like a bang, I knew I was having a full-on breakdown. I was expecting myself to achieve 110% across all aspects, and it was completely unsustainable. And it was at that point that the second voice in my head said, Anna, this is not the leader you want to be, the mum you want to be, the wife you want to be. And this is where I got mentors and coaches and completely transformed my life, stepped out of the corporate world, upskilled myself, deepened my foundations, and learned to be present again. Over here, my performance was inconsistent. Going for that 110% like that perfectionist does. They want to do well, but ironically, I was completely burnt out and I'd hit rock bottom. Now, my biggest learning from these mentors, from these coaches that helped me so much come back to the present moment, and by the way, you are only in your power in the now. Write that down. You are only in your power in the now. But my biggest learning was that 80% is enough. If I can pour into all the cups of my life, my leadership role, my new business, my children, my nutrition, my fitness, without expecting any of these cups to be 100%, guess what? I achieved balance and clarity of thought. Now, this has enabled me to thrive in life. And I believe that if I can go from that horrible position here, and by the way, in terms of leadership, this was the perfectionist leader that was stifling the growth of the team. This was the people pleaser that was inauthentic. This is the person that was struggling to ever be vulnerable, fixed, mindset. And over here, I find myself with a growth mindset, able to be perfectly imperfect. Raise your hand if at the moment, and be honest, you find it hard to embrace your imperfections. That would be normal. Quite a few hands going up there. But we need to overcome this if we want to truly lean in to leadership. And you can see my company is even called 80 Growth Academy because I believe so firmly in this rule, this 80% rule, that with 80% effort in general, and of course, yes, at times I have to tune up to 100%. Maybe my kids are off sick, maybe I've got more bookings than usual, but I'm very wary of pouring into these different cups. And it's all about smarter, not harder. Adam referenced that earlier. You don't want to be a busy fool. You want to work smarter, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. Performance is contagious. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. The question is, who are you hanging out with? Are you hanging out with the radiators, those that lift you up, that inspire you, that push you to grow? You leave feeling like you've had your battery charged. They're the best ones, right? And yes, this is a spectrum. Or do you recognize that in your life, you sometimes spend your time with the mood hoovers, those that drain you of your energy? Well, if we're the average of the 5 people we spend time with, and no wonder you're all buzzing today, because look who you are surrounded by, then we need to make sure we're choosing the right people. Because if you're hanging out with someone with a fixed mindset that is neggy, that has a victim mentality, and you leave feeling drained, you are very likely, if you've got 5 people like that in your life, spending lots of time with them, you will be number 6. So this is important. Now, I would like to share a study, because this is super interesting. And this study tracked the performance of a number of employees across 58 hours and across 11 companies. And what they found in this study truly was fascinating and staggering. They found that if you were sat next to or within 25 feet of a high performer, then your own performance would go up by 15%. 15% if you were sat next to a high performer. The flip side, if you were sat within 25 feet of a low performer, then your own performance, according to this study, would plummet by 30%. Now, whether you're sat near people who are high performers or low performers, performance is contagious. You can probably feel that today. But when it comes to you leading your business, no matter what size you are, you want to make sure that the ripple effect is a positive one, right? And I would like, in this moment, given you've probably got full tummies and you've started to think, oh, I could do with a nap. I ain't going to let you have a nap, by the way. Who would like to test whether performance truly is contagious? Are you up for it? Yeah? Good. Right, because this is what we are going to do. We are going to do a Mexican wave. Do we all know what a Mexican wave is? And yeah? So for anyone who doesn't, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the edge of the room, going all the way to the back. You are going to come out of your seats, you're going to raise your arms like this, and you are going to cheer, right? And then, I think you all know this, right? But you just gradually move along. And what we'll do is we'll go all the way to this end and we'll go all the way back. But your environment really affects you, right? This is part of choose what and who you surround yourself with. So I'm going to ask for an absolute banger of a tune. Right, Chris, if we can hit the tune and get ready on this side to start the Mexican wave. Nice and loud. Okay, wait till it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Go, go! Well done, guys! Woo! Nice! And again, guys, again, go! Stay on the way! Nice! Okay, stop! How did you feel your performance was out of 10? Shout a number. 8? 10? I don't reckon that was good enough. Shall we prove that performance truly is contagious? We're going to do it again, guys. We're going to have the music even louder, and we're going to start from this end this time. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, something I should make very clear is that although I know a lot about mental fitness and mindset, the reason I'm passionate about teaching people this, whether you're a business owner or a CEO or a team of people, is because having a thriving mindset absolutely translates to commercial results. We all do realise that, right? So this is real. Choose who you are hanging out with. I know the infectious energy that I would rather pass on if I'm a leader in a team. And just remember the influence that you have. Okay, so let's start with the first segment of this session, which is looking at what does a thriving team look like? I wonder how many of you have worked in a thriving team before. I find, with all my experience working with big businesses, small businesses across all industries, I really struggle to find them. This is something that needs to be nurtured from the top down, and I believe this insight is really important for every single person, no matter where you are on your journey. This is what a thriving team looks like. Of course, it's high performing, but there's a few things to mention here. Life ain't straightforward, is it? Markets are grey. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know what the curveballs are. And therefore, to me, a high-performing team is highly resilient, extraordinarily resilient, actually. Agile, robust, able to flex and thrive in the face of adversity. But that is not something I see very often, because as humans, we fear change. And this is coming later. We don't like the grey area. And there's something very important that is required in order to be all these things. Act smart rather than hard. A team that's not burning out. A team that's collaborative. That's able to be vulnerable with each other. That are open. That have honest debate. Continuous feedback. I mean, has anyone ever worked in a team that is truly thriving? A couple of hands have gone up. It's really hard to find, and I'm going to share with you why it's so hard to find. But the insight you're about to get and the 4 game-changing strategies you'll get at the end of this are absolutely the answer as to how to drive it. Even if you're starting from the bottom and you haven't got a team yet, this is going to be great, valuable insight for you. Here's the missing piece. There are not many people or organisations out there that are educating leaders and teams on how to be mentally fit. Raise your hand if you look after your physical fitness. Let's see a raising of hands there. Quite a lot of you, probably 60% of you. Raise your hand if you do something for your mental fitness. A lot less. Now, what do I mean by mental fitness? Let's just have some shout-outs. What would you clarify mental fitness to be? Can I go to this front row? What would you say mental fitness is there?
Being able to deal with stressful situations.
That's a good answer. Being able to deal with stressful situations. Let's go over to this row. Meditation might be a way of improving your mental fitness, getting in the present moment, yeah. Well-being. All of this stuff comes into it. For me, and I like to keep things simple, which I'm sure you're learning fast, mental fitness is clarity of thought. Mental fitness is your ability to be in the present moment and in the now. It's being present with your kids, if you've got kids. As a leader and a business owner, it's carving out time to work on the business, not just in the business. I work with hundreds of leaders, and I can tell you now, ironically, most of them, when they start with me, aren't leading at all. They are managing. Because when we are stressed, I reference this stressometer that goes 0 to 10, and the number you're at in the day depends on how you're responding to whatever those external factors are, right? But when we've got leaders up at the 8, 9, 10, which is where so many people in this country operate, or in the UK operate, they are guaranteed to be creating stress. When we are stressed, we have tunnel vision. When we are stressed, we ain't smart. We're unproductive. We don't make good decisions. And even if we do make a decision, it's more likely to be an emotional one rather than one based on fact. So this is an issue. And maybe this is going to be a really useful slide for you to take a picture of, I would suggest, because what I'm passionate about is getting everyone in this room understanding how to get in the high performance zone. There's the stressometer. There are many people that think that they operate well at the high end of the stressometer. But let me clarify. This is not a pressureometer. This is a stressometer. If you are to live at the top end, like I was for years, living at an 8, 9, 10, over here burning out because I was overworking, couldn't say no, had no boundaries, was inauthentic, people-pleasing, all the things I shared. Yes, I was performing relatively well, but the irony was I wasn't performing at my peak, and I'm really passionate about taking all of you in here from great to extraordinary, or whatever your starting point is. I was underperforming, and I didn't have the balance. There was a dark side behind the perfectionism over there. We want you operating in the green zone, where you work smarter, not harder. Where as a leader, you have the ability to infect your team positively. You can lead, not just manage. You can tailor your communication and your approach. What Adam introduced earlier with those 4 social styles, did you enjoy that? The 4 social, was that useful? Raise your hand if it was useful. Some of my favourite content that Adam delivers, I think it's incredibly useful. Now, we need to understand that, because when we're truly leading and we're in the green zone because we're managing our mental fitness, which is so important, we are able to tailor our approach based on who we are talking to. Are we talking to a spade? Do we need to speed up? Do we need to become more direct in the way we are leading them and the language that we are using? Do we recognise as a leader that a spade might need some more support on the empathy side and the emotional side potentially? So we could go deep with this. I'm not going to do that now. But being in the green zone enables you to think bigger. And my talk today is all about thinking bigger. Growth mindset is my specialist subject. But what is growth mindset? You've heard those words before, I'm assuming. Give me a nod if you've heard the words growth mindset, probably on podcasts. How much do you know about growth mindset? Anyone want to give a guess or a definition for it for me? No. Change, thank you. Progress. Personal development. I expect the room to go quiet when I ask that question, because these are words that are bandied about and no one really understands what growth mindset really is. And it's very important to me that you do understand it. For me, growth mindset is 2 things. The first thing is it is the recognition that with effort, I can get better at something. Carol Dweck is the one that wrote the book Growth Mindset. She coined these phrases, growth and fixed mindset. And she has a beautiful phrase in her book, which is all about the power of yet. Anyone heard of that? So we might have a kid that says, oh, I'm not good at maths. You add the word yet on the end, and it implies that there absolutely is opportunity for them to get better. And there always is. Who agrees that we are a work in progress? I can imagine that you in here probably are way more likely to have a growth mindset because you've booked the tickets to come here and learn. But unfortunately, the majority of people are fixed. That is a fact. It's very easy to be fixed. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. But why is having a growth mindset so important when it comes to your culture, nurturing a growth mindset within the team? Well, because with a growth mindset, you embrace mistake making. You are open to being vulnerable. As a team, you accept that you might have dips in your journey, but you want to drive progress. And the amount of connection that I find is driven off the back of a growth mindset focused team is really quite incredible. This is a team that proactively gets into the growth zone. Remember, I'm talking about a thriving team here. This is what we don't see very often. Usually this is the output of the work that I do with companies, developing and nurturing a growth mindset team. They are regularly, even daily, getting out into that growth zone. Do you know at Intuit? Intuit is a company that has, one of its products is QuickBooks. Familiar with that? I bet many of you are, right? Do you know at Intuit, they actually ask, on a daily basis, they ask each other, have you made enough mistakes today? How cool is that? Because without making those mistakes, we cannot fail forwards, which is something that is incredibly important. So this team recognises that with discomfort comes growth. And I seek discomfort on a daily basis. I kid you not, I didn't used to. I used to be that fixed mindset person over here that was really fearful of getting out of my comfort zone. But now it's like I smell it out. I want to feel like an imposter, because what does it mean if I feel like an imposter? I'm growing, and I am exactly where I should be. So this is a team that is seeking discomfort because they know that they are going to grow as a team and individually. And they are comfortable with being more vulnerable with each other. They recognise that as a team and as a business, it's all about the journey over the end result. Now, when we have that perfectionist mindset, we find ourselves obsessing over outcomes. Our self-esteem is defined by validation or the outcome or end result. And that isn't helpful for anyone. Because what we find is that if the result isn't there, the team becomes incredibly demotivated and unfocused. Now, here's a great example of a business. This is a recruitment business. There's about 50 in this company. They're called Macento Group. And this is a great example of a company that originally were very end result focused. Recruitment companies are, right? It's all about the commission. It's all about the commercial end result. And you know what they weren't doing? They weren't celebrating the small wins. They weren't sharing the learnings. Now, I wonder, as an individual or as a leader, how much at the moment you are recognizing how far you have already come. The progress that you are making and that your team are making, are we praising qualitative characteristics, effort, tolerance, perseverance, agility? These are the things that these thriving teams will notice and call out. Now, this company here, there was a lot of ego to start with. There is in recruitment businesses, right? There often is. But when we work on mindset and we build mental fitness, what we find is the barriers come down. If someone can feel more powerful from within, which is what we work on first, then absolutely the exterior guard, that face that they'd been putting on, is dropped. The ego drops, and therefore as a team they become more vulnerable, the connection grows, and it wasn't long before, recently this is, they've won one of the best top 10 companies to work for. And this was not the case before they were a growth mindset focused business. There was a lot of fear involved before. So they're failing forwards now. Did you know that Stephen Bartlett, everyone knows Stephen Bartlett? Yeah. Who listens to Diary of a CEO? I'm sure you probably do then if you know him. Did you know that he has a head of failure? He has a department all about failing. Anyone know that? Yeah? Have you heard that on the podcast? I find this fascinating. He actually wants to fail. I think it's 21% he wants as the rate of failure because that will keep him moving forward. We need to fail in order to get to the end result faster. Venus Williams believes that failure is part of the process. I love that. Does anyone else love that? Let's write that down, team. Failure is part of the process. If she hadn't lost tournaments, she would never have won the 7 Grand Slams that she has won. It was all part of her journey. So let's stop fearing it and let's expect to fail. It's not a bad thing. The problem is if you fail around the same thing more than once or twice, right? But mistakes are good. And my biggest advice to business owners is see everything as an experiment. It's all about experimentation. Failing forwards is the way forward. We want, in a thriving team, a team of lobsters. Anyone want to hear why I love lobsters so much? Or are people looking at me like I'm really weird right now? And I don't mean eating them. I love lobsters because, I wonder if you knew this, lobsters shed their shell about 25 times by the age of 7. Why do they shed their shell? Because their mushy body underneath is growing so fast and they feel so deeply uncomfortable that they have to shed this shell. Now, can you imagine how vulnerable a mushy lobster, which you've probably never seen before, I wouldn't be surprised, they are so soft and mushy, how vulnerable that lobster feels when it is exposed. It has to hide under a rock, scared of being eaten by predatory fish. But here's the thing, the stimulus for the lobster to shed its shell is discomfort. And it's that vulnerability that it grows from. Now, I find this fascinating because in life, is it true or not that sometimes we are chucked out of our comfort zones? Absolutely. COVID was a good example of that, or a bad example of that. We don't always choose to get out of our comfort zone. As much as that's a key message from me when I'm coaching any individual or team, it's getting them to gradually tiptoe out of their comfort zone as much as possible. Sometimes we're chucked into what I call the panic zone. And if we can view these situations in life through the lens of a lobster, then you will find learning and growth. In the past, I've worked a lot with clients, unfortunately, that have suffered a lot of trauma. I spent a long time working in the mental health world after the corporate burnout and before I became a coach trainer, a high-performance coach and going into businesses like I am now. I've dealt with people that have had some awful experiences. Trauma, suicide, witness murders, the lot. And there's a beautiful phrase which is post-traumatic growth. And this is being more lobster. It is growing from even the hard times, seeing it as a badly wrapped gift. And it is taking those learnings to fuel yourselves moving forward. Now, going back to the teams in business and why you as a leader want to see life this way, well, do you recognise in your own journey you might have shed your shell a few times? Raise your hand if you can recognise that. Going through tough times, maybe losing a client, maybe a relationship change. It could be anything. You've all been evolving over time. And it's the lens through which you view life that really matters. Perception is reality. And every single person in this room is viewing the same reality in a completely different way. How would you describe this room? Give me a word, if you don't mind.
Exuberant.
Exuberant. Oh, that's a posh one. How would you describe this room, sir?
Fun.
Fun. Okay, how would you describe this room?
Fulfilling.
Fulfilling. Right, 3 different perspectives on the same room. The lens through which you as a leader are viewing your team, your day, the challenge, the curveball, the opportunity matters. You get what you focus on. And here we're talking about the thriving team. They keep themselves mentally fit. They are trained to manage where they are on that stressometer, and they manage the lens through which they're viewing life. That takes training, right? That takes a lot of work. You don't just fall out of bed being able to do those things. They recognise that vulnerability is a superpower. Who admits in the past to finding vulnerability actually is a negative thing, a weakness? Raise your hand if in the past you felt that, because I did. That fixed mindset individual I used to be, the perfectionist, absolutely would not get out of the comfort zone. There was fear and shame around mistake making. But actually, as a team, as a leader, if you can all lean into vulnerability, what you will find is the level of connection that you will get as a result is phenomenal. Because when we're vulnerable, we connect with other humans. And when we're vulnerable, it often means we've stepped out of our comfort zone and we are about to grow. So we've got to embrace it. So, Sackler UK. Everyone know who Sackler is? Sackler Pesto? If you like your pesto, you'll know who Sackler is. They even have a Lobster of the Week award for their employees. Since working with me, I mean, this lobster thing goes down very well. It's very memorable, right? They have a lobster of the week. So basically, who's bounced back the best from some curveball or challenge? Or who's shared the greatest learning? Is that not something that you could, if you're not already, do in your business now? Whether it's just you or you and a partner, or whether you're a team of 40, reflect on your learnings. Praise your small wins. And remember to zoom out and see your business journey as not just about the end results, but actually as the journey. And there is no doubt about it. When we have a thriving team, it makes the business more money and it saves the business money. Here's a little example. I was recently just before Christmas, in GHD. Everyone know GHD? All those men who straighten their hair? Yeah? I was recently in GHD and I was delivering leadership training. I was covering all this stuff about nurturing growth mindset, but the point here really is I was teaching them to be more lobster. And without sharing anything confidential, they'd had a really, really tough couple of months. And they'd underperformed versus where they wanted to be. And in this session, we brainstormed the learnings from that past month. And they all got viewing the situation through a much more powerful lens. Now, what did that mean? It meant that they were able to grow from their learnings. They were able to become more agile, pivot, adapt their behaviour and approach. And guess what? The following month was their record month of the year. Year-on-year growth like they'd never seen before. So do not underestimate the power of a team of lobsters, the power of you as leaders understanding truly what growth mindset is about. It really is about being a work in progress, everyone. And I think in this room in general, I'm sure that you are in that camp already because you would not be here. But I've no doubt we can take that to another level. And as mentioned, you want your team to become more connected because then we retain our staff. It costs at least 30% of an employee's salary to recruit another. That's expensive, and it can be a lot more than that. We want to be retaining our team, and thriving teams are more retainable, surprisingly enough, because they're a more enjoyable place to work. There's less pressure, there's less stress, etc. So I think at this point, what would be fun is me to test your ability to think bigger. Are you ready for this? And there are a couple of prizes in this for a couple of people as well. Raise your hand if you're up for being tested in terms of your ability to think bigger. Yes. Right, okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, I'm assuming you've all got notebooks, just sketch this grid of 9 dots on your piece of paper right now. And I'm going to give you a couple of rules. Chris, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to hit that button while they're doing this in a moment. Okay, you've got your 9 dots, hopefully. Here's the rules of the game. You are not allowed to lift your pen from that notepad or piece of paper, right? You've got to keep your pen on the paper at all times. And with no more than 4 lines, do not take your pen off the paper. With no more than 4 lines, you have got to get through, pass through every single one of those 9 dots. Does everyone understand the rules? Okay, Chris, hit it with the music. Let's see who can do this. Once you've done it, if you think you have, put your hands up. Let's go. Oh, this is interesting looking at what you're doing. You've got to start. Start by starting. How are you getting on? Anyone done it yet? Think outside the box, people. Come on. Oh, I'm coming over. Everyone else carry on. Well, did you take your pen off the paper? Amazing. Okay, we've got someone who's done it. You've won a prize. What was your name? Giancarlo. You've won a prize. Well done. Okay, music off. Thank you. We've got a winner, but there is a second prize for the next person that can get it right. So hit the music one more time. The second person that can get it right is going to get a prize. Go. Keep going, guys. everybody, that we had someone who'd already done it over there, and yet nobody ran over and asked him for the answers. Isn't it amazing how we get stuck in our behaviours? That was very fixed mindset for everyone, not to have gone and be curious and gone for the shortcut. I mean, that's what mentors are for, right? That's why we're here, to get all the shortcuts. We just needed to run over to Giancarlo and get the answer, right? But well done to you for getting that right. I am going to share with you the answer here. So here we go. The trick is to think outside the box. But you've not gone through the 9 dots. Okay, so here we go. This is the first line. You could do this any way round, right? 2, 3, 4. Problem is, you were seeing what you expected to see. And we've got to get thinking bigger. So, let's move on to the second part of the talk, which is really reflecting on the sick team. Let's talk about the sick team. I think this is going to be easier to relate to. Has anyone worked in a team before that has been a bit toxic? Raise your hand if you can relate to that. This is common, and it does start from the top. I am going to be addressing leadership in this, so this is going to be very interesting, a bit of a self-awareness piece coming. Any of these words resonate? When it comes to a toxic culture, we often see fear, shame and blame around mistake making. We see people not wanting to step out of their comfort zones at all because they are afraid. They think that they are going to get their head bitten off, or they're going to be ashamed and portrayed in front of the rest of the team as it being a weakness. And the overriding point with this type of culture, which I know we can all relate to in the past, I'm sure, a complete lack of trust. Without trust, you are never going to have a thriving team. So I wonder at the moment how much work as leaders you're putting into building that trust with your team and connecting with them, getting to understand them, trusting them to be more accountable. Because this is exactly what we don't want. And for me, there are 3 key viruses that infect that business body. And the first one is fixed mindset. Did you know that 90% of your thoughts today, roughly, are the same as you had yesterday? Did you guys know that? What does that get you thinking? If 90% of your thoughts today are the same as you had yesterday, what does that tell us? Not enough growth. I totally agree. Was it Paul? Yep. Not enough growth, Paul. Anything else that's alarming about 90% of our thoughts being the same? It is a bit depressing. Well, I often ask the question, if I informed you that you have roughly 50,000 thoughts a day, what percentage of those thoughts are helpful versus unhelpful? Now, you don't have to shout that out. That's a personal question. I will share with you that often people do say to me, flipping heck, I'm about 70% negative. And many people say I'm about 90% negative. Why is that extra alarming if 90% of our thoughts today are the same as yesterday and many of our thoughts are unhelpful? What does that tell us? We are stuck in a very negative rut. And that feels terrible. That's when we see people getting really depressed and beating themselves up over a long period of time, which can lead, of course, to terrible mental health, which I know a lot about. But let's look at this 90% because it's interesting. Behind every unhelpful thought you or your team have, and think about yourself in leadership, is a belief driving that thought. Beliefs drive your thoughts. Thoughts drive the feelings in your body. You are what you think. And it's those feelings that drive the behavior and make you show up the same way as you've been showing up probably for weeks, months, or decades, unless you've done a lot of self-work. And then what our body does, when we believe something, our brain simply wants to gather the evidence that supports that belief, even if it's fake evidence. So if I believe I'm clumsy, I'll give you a simple example, and someone says, Anna, can you carry this really busy tray of drinks through that room full of people? What sort of thoughts am I going to have about that? Oh my gosh, I can't do that. I'm going to stack it. My body feels tense. See, this is the self-fulfilling prophecy. My body feels tense. The behaviour is that I probably will spill the drinks or avoid carrying the tray. And all that happens is that I reinforce that belief I am clumsy. This is the neurology that you need to understand. And in leadership, this is relevant. You can think about this specific to yourselves as leaders. But never to me has this quote meant more than thinking about it alongside that 90%. This geezer called Einstein, I'm sure you all know, we're just doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Think about that in a business context, because we're talking about fixed mindset in a team, or fixed mindset in a leader that then gets filtered down into the team. There ain't going to be no progress. Complacency is the thief of progress. Write that down. Complacency is the thief of progress, and that is not why any of us are here. But naturally, that is going to be what you want to do. You're going to want to stay in the comfort zone. Does anyone mind me swearing? Raise your hand if you mind me swearing. Good. I'm going to share with you now what I call the comfort zone. I call it the warm shit. And I'll explain why, because I know you'll remember this. It's warm because it is cozy and familiar. It's pretty safe. You've been doing it the same way every day for a very long time, for many people, decades often. Think of the 90%. But why is it shit? What's not going to happen in your comfort zone? Growth. There ain't no growth in your comfort zone. I'm sure you've heard that. So we've got to get out the warm shit. And we've got to make it safe, a safe environment for our teams to get out the warm shit. Otherwise, they're going to be repeating the same things over and over, and your team, your business, your clients get no growth. And that's where we find businesses and teams becoming stagnant, which we don't want. Here's a second virus, which you'll all know about, because it's the reason why people don't want to get out of their comfort zone. Fear. A deadly virus that absolutely can hold back teams in business. Why do we want to stay in the comfort zone? Well, we've talked about complacency, but when it comes to fear, there's some obvious fears that crop up for me. Failure. Perfectionism. Perfectionists would rather look like they're brilliant at what they do than risk coming across as not being ideal or perfect. And so they ironically stifle their own growth. They will be fearing judgment, which is one of the other ones here. And of course, there's a lot of people that fear change and the unknown. But isn't business life always unknown? You never know what the market's going to throw you, what factors might occur that you need to be agile and respond to effectively. If we have got teams that are not happy being out of their comfort zone and can't thrive in the grey area, what do we create? Stress. A hell of a lot of stress. And that leads to mental health issues, that leads to underperformance, because you'll find them at the top end of that stressometer, as I've shared, not being able to think straight, believing the stories in their head, and by the way, thoughts aren't fact, not working smarter, instead burning out working harder, and that is a problem. But let's move into the one that is going to be very relevant for you all. Not that saying that you're all bad bosses, by the way, but you need to know about this. And I've definitely been a bad boss in the past, when ironically I thought I was quite a good one. I'm going to share with you something now, and that is that 75%, according to a recent Gallup poll of 1 million employees, 75% of employees leave their job because of a bad boss. Is anyone surprised by that or not? No, right, lots of heads shaking, you're not surprised. I'm not surprised either. I actually can't label more than one good boss I've had in my life. There aren't many of them because it's not something you get taught at school. And unfortunately, it's not necessarily something you get taught very well when you start a job in a business either. And mental fitness plays a part, which is why I'm passionate about bridging that gap. But let's have a look at 6 different toxic leadership styles that you need to be aware of, because you need to absolutely avoid them at all costs. It really does start with you guys when it comes to culture. It starts from the top. If you were in a big business, and I know we haven't got many really big businesses here, But if there are 4 leaders in a business, there is a micro culture that sits beneath every single leader. There's not one culture in a business. Does that make sense? I think that's an interesting thing to consider. But let's dig into these 6 toxic boss types and see which ones you can relate to, either if it's relating to it for yourself or whether you're relating because you've experienced it in the past. Here's the first one, the dominator. Oh, this is a boss that is so overpowering, they just breed fear within the team. Team members are not going to be comfortable speaking to a dominator. They like having the power. With all of these, there are probably insecurities sitting behind them. So this is one. Then we've got the perfectionist. I can relate to this from the past. The perfectionist obsesses over the end result. But is it good enough? They're very critical with their team, which is really demoralizing and demotivating. And they're very likely to not be modeling a helpful work-life balance because they'll be burning out themselves. And that filters down into the team. A lot of fear, shame, and blame around mistake making. So you can imagine a team with a perfectionist leader, they're not going to innovate well. They're not going to make much progress because mistakes aren't welcomed. Makes sense, guys? Give me a nod if this all makes sense. Great. Let's have a look at the next one. The people pleaser. I was a little bit of this before I did my self-work as well. I wanted everyone to be my friend. And I didn't do a very good job at recognizing the macro needs of the company. And when you people please, do you know what you lose? You lose respect. You think you're doing the best thing, being people's friends, but actually it's a dangerous approach because you will definitely get underperformance, as you will with all of these 6. Next one. Those that love to stay in the ivory tower. The I'm too gooders. There's no connection with the team. They don't build rapport. They don't ask important questions about how their lives are outside of work. They just think they're too good, which creates a horrible feeling within the team in terms of culture. And then we have the thief. Anyone had one of these leaders before? The one who nicks the credit for what you did. I've had one of them before. Anyone else? Raise your hand if you can relate to that. It's not a nice one, is it? There's definitely insecurities sitting underneath the thief leader because they think that they need to prove themselves all the time. And then finally, we got the know-it-all. Well, the know-it-all is that leader that is stuck in a fixed mindset, stuck in a rut thinking. They don't want to hear other people's ideas. But going back to that thriving team over here, the leader of the thriving team is inviting cognitive diversity, the sharing of ideas. They're inviting it. They get to the solution quicker because they're getting ideas from everyone, because everyone's got a different perspective, as we proved earlier. This is the solution-focused team. And over here with these toxic leaders, we have got leaders faced and focused on the problem. We don't want that victim mentality. Now, no matter which of those 3 viruses, how many viruses? 3. Whichever those viruses are that can show up in your business quite easily. Fixed mindset, fear, and a bad boss. Without doubt, this causes stress. And here's the problem, just to reiterate. You do not want a team operating at the top end of the stressometer because they ain't going to work smart. They're going to be underperforming. They're not going to be their best selves in front of clients. They're not going to be working productively. And they're certainly not going to be leading if they are leaders. They're going to be managing only, not working on the business, just stuck in it. And we do not get progress that way. So who's ready for the game-changing solutions? 4 performance boosters that are set to drive growth in your business. Raise your hand if you're up for learning the how. Okay, let's dig in. The first one might not surprise you. You have got to look after yourself first. Get your own oxygen mask on first, so to speak. And you do realise, right, that when you fill your own cup first, you are going to have more in that cup to pour into your team. Very often, especially the people pleaser leader, they will not fill their cup first and they will burn out. And this is a problem. The second tip when it comes to vaccinating yourself first is nurture and model a growth mindset yourself. What does that mean in leadership? Well, it means leaning into vulnerability. An example of this is admitting as a leader that you are a work in progress. Be open about what you're great at, but also be open about what you don't know. Show your team that vulnerability. They will model it, they will copy you, and they then will lean into their own vulnerability and share where they might need to develop. Be curious as a leader. Be open and connect with them. I'm not saying cry in front of them all the time, but be that open leader because you'll drive so much more connection with your team. Next, we've got to prioritise the team's mental fitness. This is something that I am most passionate about because I really do believe that this is the missing link in high-performance culture. We have to have a mentally fit team. We need them being in the now. We need them understanding how to manage their stressometer. Now, I'm not covering that specifically today, but absolutely that is my first call in a business is to get the team mentally fit. Let's get them building high self-belief. Let's get them deepening those foundations so that their mindset, if you imagine it like a building and foundations beneath, deep foundations mean that that building stands strong. They've got more perspective. They're higher performing. We've got to look after them because we want them operating in the high performance zone. So invest in your people to get them mentally fit. And I challenge anyone not to see mindset as this fluffy thing that doesn't translate to commercial results because absolutely there is a link. And then thirdly, we've got to promote a viral mindset. Well, this is the think bigger mindset we've been talking about today. We've got to promote growth mindset and nurture it within the team. But how do we specifically do that? Here's some great points to help you. Start with building trust, like I said earlier. Build trust. Then focus on the journey over the end result. So in your team meetings, wouldn't it be really useful to have on the agenda celebration of some small wins? Discussion about the journey, the learnings from whatever that curveball might be. Start monitoring bounce back ability. In terms of praise, don't necessarily just praise end results. Praise progress. Praise the character traits of your team. Have they been tenacious, agile? Notice these things. As leader, you really want to be reinforcing growth mindset from the top, as I said. And welcome mistake making. Show them some case studies. There's so many great companies that are failing forward. I mentioned Stephen Bartlett with the head of failure. He wants to fail. I shared the Venus Williams example earlier. Intuit asking how many mistakes you've made. Nick them off me. Bring it into a team meeting. Explain what failing forward means. They just need to understand they can't be making the same mistake more than twice, right? But you want them embracing that vulnerability to fail forward. And think bigger meetings are a great idea. What do I mean by this? Well, that Macento group I mentioned earlier, they have a Think Bigger Tuesday meeting when all they do is reflect on the journey. They are figuring out how they can move forward effectively, how they can learn from challenges. And it is a specific meeting that they now have. Well, they used to only meet about the end results and the numbers. So this is much more journey focused. And finally, continuous feedback is a must. Encourage that continuous feedback. You win or you learn. And for anyone else who doesn't know about Kaizen, raise your hand if you've heard about Kaizen before. So Kaizen is all about continuous improvement. It's about marginal gains. So a good analogy to share to help you understand this Japanese philosophy of tiny, fragile steps of change is imagine a pilot. He or she changes the direction of that plane by just 1 degree. Over time, it is landing in a completely different destination. Wouldn't it be wonderful to teach your team to keep nudging forward, keep tiptoeing out of that comfort zone, making marginal gains, continuous 1 degree shifts on a daily basis? And finally, test and vaccinate on entry. Are you recruiting right? Are you asking growth mindset-oriented questions when you're interviewing people to join your team? You want people with CQ. You've heard of EQ, right? Emotional intelligence. CQ is change intelligence. Measure their ability to deal with adversity. Measure their hunger for growth. And in terms of this, here's a couple of great questions that are growth mindset questions that are going to help you recruit the right people to nurture a high-performing team. I'm just going to read out the first one. Can you tell me about a time you faced a significant challenge at work, and how did you respond, and what did you learn from that? Fantastic question. And I've got an amazing share for you now. This is a great freebie, so get your phones out. If you scan this code, you will get free access to a document with 14 growth-oriented interview questions which have really made a difference with all the businesses that I've worked with to ensure they are recruiting people with that growth mindset. It will save your business money. It will make your business money to do that. And I'm throwing in also an extra freebie of a 20-minute video for you or anyone in your team to drive high performance. 20-minute video. Get your phones out now, log on to that. All you need is your name and your email, and you will get that document and the free video. So, wrapping up, these are the performance boosters. And we've covered those 3 sections today. We've looked at what a great team looks like. We've looked at what a sick team looks like. And we've looked at the solutions, 4 game-changing solutions to drive high-performance culture in your business, whether that's now or in the future. And I'm going to end with one more test of that Mexican wave. Let's see if we can really prove that performance is contagious. We're going to start at this side. We'll just do it once this way and once back. Let's go, Chris. Hit the button. Woo! Go. I've been Anna Mosley. You have definitely been positively contagious. Thanks for having me, everyone.